think there can be an understanding or an interpretation sometimes that in order to be a good Catholic, you have to be a good boy and do what you're told and all that, which is true to a certain degree. But there are also occasions then when you actually have to justifiably rebel, where you have to justifiably call out an injustice and say that's actually unacceptable, that's actually against our faith, that's actually wrong. There are a lot of situations where I think, a growing number of situations in today's world, where we as Catholics, especially here in Ireland, we're discovering that being Catholic makes us different, and therefore there are things being proposed as okay that aren't. And in order to be a good Catholic, we now have to actually stand up and say, no, I won't do that. I won't. So if abortion is proposed as an option, we say, well, it's actually not an option. No, it's not. If we're told we can't practice our faith, well, we will. Anyway, thank you for your advice, and I'll give it due regard. Which is somewhat passive-aggressive, but there you go. We have the feast day of Saint Maximillian Kolbe today, who died today's the 14th of August, tomorrow being the 15th, so just the day before the Assumption. He passed away in 1941. An apt day for him because of his profound love for Our Lady. He was incredible. He was a Franciscan priest from Poland and had an absolutely tireless missionary zeal. When he was young, his mom passed away, and he had apparently a vision of Our Lady, who came to him with two crowns, a white crown and a red crown. White crown for purity, red crown for martyrdom. And she said to little Maximilian, which do you want? I think he was 8 years of age, if I remember correctly, something like that. Which do you want? And he, as a real child, just goes, I'll have them both. And she said, and so it will be. So he lived this, as a great purity, great love for Our Lady, which also then led him to resist what was wrong at the time. It's very interesting, you know, when we hear about Freemasonry today, it all sounds like conspiracy theories and things. But Freemasonry at the time was very, very overt, right? They would actually parade outside the Vatican, death to the Pope kind of thing, around about that era. So there was no secret, like. So he then, to combat that, started a magazine and started a foundation, a group of people called the Knights of the Immaculata. And they would publish then this magazine to spread stories of the power of the Rosary, lives of the saints, things like that, good Catholic things, in order to spread the good news, spread the joy, the hope of our faith, and also to inform people who may not always have been so educated into faith as to what we believe and why. So tireless missionary there as regards the printing press, but that wasn't enough. He decided he was sent to Japan, and he set up a mission there in Nagasaki, a rather famous city for other reasons, towards the end of the war. So he sets up a mission there in Poland itself. He was instrumental in setting up, it was a whole village called Niepokalino, and they had like schools, fire stations, seminarians. It was an absolutely incredible place, just a hub of activity where Franciscans were coming to be formed. Just incredible. All this, by the way, from a man who, when he was young, had TB, and so always had kind of a dicky lung, as one of our former community members here would say. Always had a bit of a weak constitution, but he would just drive himself into the ground with work. Absolutely incredible. Okay, now the reason I say all of that is because he's famous for the last action of his life, but the last action of his life was preceded by a huge number of good decisions, a huge number of missionary opportunities that he fulfilled. So it's not just how it ended that's important, inspirational and all as it is, but there's a whole life dedicated to Our Lady before that. And so when he was in Japan and India, he had to come back due to health reasons back to Poland. So Second World War had kicked off. The Nazis had invaded Poland, and he was arrested for a time and then freed. Now, if you have been arrested by Nazis, I could imagine that would shake you. that's not the kind of thing you just kind of get over. I could imagine you would think twice before doing anything that might get you caught again. You know, you might consider, I don't know, fleeing the country entirely if you could, or going as far away from all of this as possible. But he continues just as normal. And so in this village there, the Franciscan village, if you will, called Nepokalano, he's working away, and he's consoling people, and he's administering the sacraments, celebrating Mass, doing all these things, defying the system, defying what he was told to do by the Nazi regime, defies them and says, no, of course I'm going to keep practicing my faith, of course I'm going to continue to be a priest, and I don't care who tells me to do otherwise. So he continued, and he was arrested then a second time and sent to Auschwitz, the concentration camp. Now, Auschwitz was just, it's like hell on earth. It's like absolutely miserable in every sense. The place is deliberately devoid of hope, where all sorts of horrendous abuses would take place, where sometimes the guard would just get up one day, take out his rifle, just pick a random person in the crowd and boom, shoot him, let them fall down, and then everyone just has to kind of walk over them, or then command two guys, pick them up. Just like, it was just horrific. Obviously starvation rations, so people were just reduced to walking skeletons. Then hard labour on top of that, digging trenches, and often then in the Polish winters, autumns and winters, springs, which are much harder than here, just wet, sloppy, snowy, miserable, and you're outside then in the same clothes all year, digging a trench or digging graves or whatever. No, actually no graves. They had another way of disposing of the bodies in their gas chambers and furnaces. So just absolutely hellish. If you ever visited on the main entrance on the way in, it says Arbeit macht frei, which means work makes you free. Again, it's this kind of callous, sadistic attitude. You know, if you work, you'll be free. You were never going to be free. But you know, it was horrible, absolutely horrific. So some people wanted to escape, obviously, and some people managed, very few. But on one occasion, a number of prisoners managed to escape under the fences. They got out, and the punishment was then for everyone else who remained to kind of warn them that this must never happen again. If anyone escapes, 10 people who remain in the camp will have to die in the starvation bunkers. So everyone was lined up, and as a warning that no one else would try this, 10 people were chosen at random. One of them was a young father, Francis in English, and when he was chosen, he was called forward by the SS guards, and he said, no, I'm married and I have children. He still had some hope that he would see them again, but he said, I'm married and I have children. And obviously that's not going to carry much weight, talking to a Nazi who really doesn't care. He's choosing 10 people to die. I mean, why would he show mercy? You're not going to get out anyway. So hearing this plea for mercy, you know, I'm married, I have children, please, not me. Father Maximillian Kolbe stands forward and says, I will take this man's place. And the SS guard looks at him and says, who are you? And he says, I'm a Catholic priest. And the guard says, well, you dead, him dead, all the same to me, in you go. So he accepted his offer, and Father Maximillian Kolbe went into the starvation bunkers. Now, whatever about being shot by a firing squad, in the starvation bunkers, it's a very slow way to die, because you die of dehydration. You start to actually lose your mind due to lack of water after a couple of days, and your body just wastes away until your organs shut down one after the other. I mean, it's a horrific way to go. And so he was put into these hunger bunkers, starvation bunkers. They're small little rooms, but again, down underground. Like it's the smell there is horrific. The insanity of people then just makes it all worse. So I mean, mentally, physically, it's hellish. So what did Father Maximilian do down there? He started praying, and he got the guys with him to pray every day. So they prayed numbers of rosaries a day, and then he'd sing the Salve Regina, and they would join in. And they learned different hymns. They sang different hymns that they knew from church before. And it was said like by guards who reported afterwards that there was something very different about that particular hunger bunker, because there was a number of them down there, but this one was different. This one, there wasn't the wailing and cursing that you'd hear in others, like, of, why me, God, where are you? There was none of that in that hunger bunker. The rest were, as I say, just horrific places, but there was something different. He brought the light into the most intense darkness. And a lot of people then, due to malnourishment and beatings, which, by the way, along the way, Father Maximillian Kolbe was singled out as Polish and as a priest, so particularly he was hated by the guards. There's one particular SS guard who hated priests. So when he'd see Father Maximilian carrying logs, he'd push him over and kick him until he was unconscious. So then when these people are sent to the hunger bunker, you're already so physically beyond exhaustion, like you're so physically weak, that they didn't last long. So after 1 week, a lot of them had died. But 2 weeks later, Father Maximilian was still alive. Most had already passed away. He had prayed with them, prayed for them. And when the time came then for them to clean out the bunkers for new prisoners coming in, they saw that Father Maximilian was still alive. So they sent in a guard with a syringe of carbolic acid, injected into his heart, I believe, and it killed him on the spot. But I was thinking about this morning, like, usually when I'm trying to prepare a homily, I try to have one point. What is the point? You can tell wonderful stories. What's the point? And I thought, what came to me was, Father Maximilian Kolbe is a perfect example of what a priest should be. What is a priest? A priest is a man who lives sacrificing himself for others. A priest sacrifices himself for others. Why? Because a priest is supposed to be another Christ, and that's what Jesus did. He sacrifices himself for others. So that's what we're called, that's what we as priests are called to do. So Father Maximilian does this throughout his life as a missionary, not in the best of physical health, but going to Japan, going to Poland, going to India, getting arrested by the SS, in the camp, being a beacon of hope, and accompanying these men to their deaths, and I would imagine to their eternal salvation. Every aspect of his life, every moment of his life, sacrificing himself for love of others. That's what Jesus did. That's what a priest is called to do. And then in a similar way, all of us, because all of us are called to be Christ-like, being Christians doesn't mean being part of a club that Jesus founded, it's being Christ-like. All of us are called to sacrifice ourselves for love of others. This is also in virtue of our baptism, that we become priest, prophet, and king in virtue of our baptism. So I'm called to, you as lay people as well, are called to sacrifice yourselves for love of others. Me in my priestly ministry, you as a mom, as a religious, as a husband or as a wife. So this is what we're called to do. So the saints then aren't just, I don't know, we shouldn't have a kind of a superstitious attitude towards the saints that when there's something we need, we call him Padre Pio, call him St. Anthony or whatever. That's nice. But there's more to the lives of saints than that. We're actually called to imitate them. We're called to imitate saints, be like them. We're called to be saints. We're called to be the new saints of this new millennium. And so we ask, through the prayers and intercession of St. Maximillian Kolbe today, that we will not hesitate to sacrifice ourselves for love of those in our charge, those in our care, those we are responsible for. Because in sacrificing ourselves, we become more like the people God has called us to be. We become more like Jesus himself. Amen.